All right. Hello. Hi. I'm Melissa. I'm the Managing Director from Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. Thank you all for coming today and the people who are joining us online. I know there's a number of you. Thank you for making the time today. I'd like to just start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land that we're gathered on today. They are the Bidjigal people from the Eora Nation, and they've been caring for the land, the sky, and the water around Hurstville and the Georges River for thousands of years. So we'd like to acknowledge and show respect to the elders past and present. And for the people dialing in, it is Aboriginal land that we're all on and the various lands that we're on today. All right, we'll start with just a bit of housekeeping. Um, if you're joining us online, please remember to stay on mute. We would like to see your faces though, so please turn your camera on. And please, if you have any questions or comments, to put them in the chat feature and we will come to them at the end of the meeting. And for the people joining us in person, emergency exits are the way that you came in, and toilets are also back out towards the front door. Tea and coffee up the back if you'd like to help yourself to that. So rather than leaving it till the end, I'd like to start the meeting by expressing gratitude to all of our volunteers, our staff, our partners, our sponsors, our donors, to everyone who has given so much to Sydney Dogs and Cats Home for nearly 80 years. We couldn't be here doing what we do and having the impact that we have without the support of everyone in the community. We are a community pound. We are Sydney's only community pound. And I say community in every sense of the word. We've survived for nearly 80 years with the support from community. So huge thank you. And it is the end of Volunteer Week, which is another great opportunity to celebrate and acknowledge the incredible work that our volunteers do every day at our shelter, whether they're taking dogs for walks, cleaning kennels, doing laundry, foster caring our animals. There's so many ways that our volunteers take the pressure off our staff and add such beautiful enrichment to our animals. So thank you so much. Before I look at Sydney Dogs and Cats Home specific accomplishments over the last couple of years, I'd like to just talk very briefly about the sector in general. And I'll try not to go too long about this because it is something I'm very passionate about and sometimes I can waffle. So I'll try and keep it succinct. I'll start by looking back a couple of years because that reflects on where we are now and the work that we're doing now. So if we look at COVID, through COVID, we saw lots of changes take place and some positive things happening in the animal welfare sector. We saw lower intakes coming in. We had far less lost animals arriving on our doorstep, which is a really positive thing. We also saw an increase in adoptions. I think everyone thought it was a great time through COVID to get a dog. And fortunately, some of those were from rescues and shelters and pounds, and we saw an increase in adoptions. The negative part, of course, attached to that is there was a massive increase in bred animals, particularly backyard breeding, and a decrease in desexing and socialisation. Now, the reason I mention that is because a lot of the problems we're seeing today, not just at Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, but in the sector right across the state, is due to a lot of behavioural issues from animals. We've got higher rates coming into us now, coming back to that socialisation piece. So it was a really significant change in the sector. I was watching closely what was happening overseas through COVID. We followed what was happening in America about 6 to 12 months behind, and we were following them pretty closely. There was a shelter in Texas. They had 250 kennels on site. Typically, before COVID, they operated about 80% capacity. Through COVID, it was the first time in their very long history that they cleared their shelter entirely, and for the first time, they had 0 animals on site. We didn't quite see that at Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, but we did see the lowest numbers we've ever seen with dogs on site through COVID, which is a really positive thing. And that's due to the lower intakes and the increase in adoptions. So let's now go post-COVID. So that's kind of where we're sitting now, even though it's a fair way beyond COVID. So we saw intakes increase a lot. We're seeing a lot of animals coming in, both dogs and cats. We've seen a reduction in adoptions. Expressions of interest and inquiries are the lowest we've seen in a very long time. We're seeing a massive increase in surrenders and the need for surrenders. Coming out of COVID, we were receiving about 100 phone calls every week with people needing or wanting to surrender their dog or cat. That number I was hoping would decrease. It's done the opposite. We're now getting about 150 calls every week with people needing or wanted to surrender the animals. And that's for a number of reasons. Cost of living is a huge reason. People are really struggling to provide the care for their animals and feel that they need to give them up. People are needing to move home and they can't find rental accommodation that will accept their animal. And of course, coming back to my comment before, behaviours. We're seeing animals who were brought in through COVID. They're used to having their humans at home with them. They haven't been socialised with people or animals through COVID. And what we're seeing now is, as people have returned back to work, an increase in anxiety, separation anxiety, and that's displayed in various behaviours, which for some people is complex for them to care for the animal, and they look at surrendering the animal rather than looking at behaviour supports. So those are the key drivers for surrenders, and we try and support as best we can. However, like every other pound, shelter and rescue across the state, across Australia, we have very limited resources to be able to support these people because of capacity. Everyone's full and there's really nowhere for these animals to go. So it's a sector crisis, and I don't say crisis lightly. Pound, shelters and rescues right across the state are overflowing. And we need to come up with some solutions to support it. So we're seeing a huge increase in demand, obviously for Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, but for other pounds, shelters and rescues across the state. Huge need for vet services, whether that be private vet services. We're seeing a higher rate of animals coming to us needing vet care, which Laura might touch on that a little bit later. So let's have a look at what some of the solutions are. So obviously it starts at the top with legislation reform, and we need to continue working closely with local and state governments around reforming legislation around animal management. We need a strong focus on prevention. We need to stop the animals coming into shelters in the first place. And the only way to do that is with prevention strategies. So it's things like running your desexing program, education around responsible pet ownership, microchipping, working with councils to support them, their residents and communities around effective animal management and responsible pet ownership. But importantly, that prevention piece around desexing, particularly with cats. We're seeing huge volumes of cats coming in that if we run prevention programs, and again, Laura will touch on this later, that will curb the problem dramatically. And education is a huge piece, educating residents and communities around that responsible pet ownership and animal management. So we're trying to do what we can in all these areas. And I know that a lot of councils around the state are unifying to look at ways that we can get legislation reform, increase government funding to support shelters, pounds and rescues, and to support the prevention programs. That needs to be funded on a government level. And we're having really productive and positive conversations to increase that funding in the sector. So let's have a little look at Sydney Dogs and Cats Homes specifically. So we've made a lot of changes in the last few years, and changes that I'm very proud of. We were doing really well at Carlton, but moving out of Carlton into temporary facilities put a lot of pressure on us, and we needed to come up with new ways of working. The leadership team and the board, for the first time in our history, developed a 5-year strategy. And along with that were business and operating plans to give us clear structure and direction about how we were going to move forward. A big piece of that was financial sustainability. We had to overhaul our financial models. So as I said, moving out of the shelter into temporary facilities put huge strain on us. We had 2 commercial leases, which financially was not sustainable, and we were in trouble. So we had to overhaul our financial modelling to come up with a way to be financially sustainable in our current environment. And we've seen great positive changes in that respect. In 2 years, we doubled our revenue, which is what we needed to do to be able to cover those increased costs and overheads that we're now incurring. Foster care program. That's been a key focus for us, and Felicity's in the back of the room. Felicity's played a huge role in developing our foster care program. So it's a really important part of our organisation for a number of reasons. Financially, obviously, it's a much more economic model to have animals in homes rather than shelters. However, the most important factor of foster care program is the care for the animals. Having them in a home-based environment is the highest level of care we can give them, rather than a shelter environment, which is not good for any animal. So our focus has been on growing our foster care program, and we've done that pretty quickly, and Felicity's played a huge role in that. So in the last 2 years, we've moved from one full-time staff member to 2.5. We've doubled our animals going into foster, which is a huge accomplishment. But importantly, on top of that, the team's worked really hard in coming up with new solutions and ways to support both the carers caring for the animals in the home and for the animals in a home environment to make sure they've still got that continuous care from our team with behaviour support, vet services. So it's a program that I'm really proud of, and it's an important one for our future. We can't just keep building more and more kennels, even though we know we're going to have more and more animals coming to us. So the growth strategy is around expanding and continuing to invest in our foster care program. Continual improvement is a huge one that we've been focused on in the last couple of years. Ways to do things more efficiently, ways to do things better. So we look for opportunities operationally to improve efficiencies, and we also look at ways with best practice animal welfare to make sure that we're always leading in that space, providing the highest level of care to our animals. And that's an area that we'll continue to work on in the years to come. Community impact, prevention work. My slides are telling me a different thing. Prevention work, we talked on that before. That's a huge focus for us as well, to play a bigger role in that space. So at the moment, we've been running desexing programs with some local councils, which has been a huge success. We also support Cat Protection Society and RSPCA with some of the prevention work, but it's a space that we'll be investing more and more support to make sure that we're doing what we can to try and stop those animals coming into shelters and needing shelter support. Community impact, that's a little bit of what I talked about, and Laura's going to touch on that around the impact that we have in community. It's an area that we find so important. As I said before, we're a community pound, and we have an obligation not just to receive support from the community, but to return and support the community in every way that we can. So we have historically and continue to do a number of programs with mental health, with aged care. We've done work with the Army programs. I can see Jane at the back. She was integral in the work of the Army programs. And we're looking at ways to grow and expand that. Now, through COVID, a lot of the community work was reduced because we couldn't do outreach work. And in our current facilities, we're restricted with what we can provide on site. But what I'm looking forward to in the future is not just returning to the community programs that we were running historically, but really expanding that work and having an even stronger presence community-wise to make the biggest impact that we can for both pets and people across communities of Sydney. We've been applying for grants, and we've been successful with some grants, which has been fantastic. I don't know if you saw when you walked in at the side of the building, there's a vet van. You might have seen 6 on the side, our beautiful big dog. We were very lucky to get a grant to fund the purchase of the vet van. So that will be a community outreach vehicle that we can go into community and continue that outreach impact work. And I think, again, Laura's going to touch on that, so I won't say too much. We've also received some grants to support the prevention work that we've been doing to enable us to run desexing programs and support community residents, focusing on low socio areas. We're trying to remove obstacles for desexing, and if financial hurdles are one of them, we're trying to remove that with subsidised programs. Government funding, this is a big one. We've never received government funding in our history, and this is the first time that we have been successful in obtaining government funding. So it's a huge milestone for us, and we'll talk a little bit more about the funding in a minute. But we've been able to achieve that through a number of grants. The vet van and, of course, Kurnell, which we're going to touch on shortly, which is, I'm pretty sure, the reason why everyone's here today. But that's a huge milestone for the home to go from never receiving any government funding to now get a few significant pieces across the line. So I'm very proud of the team for the work that we've done to be able to secure that. And the last one I'll touch on is workplace culture. This has been a huge focus again over the last couple of years to create a workforce that has a safe, a culture of well-being, a culture of psychological safety, a place where people want to come to work. And this extends to our volunteers as well. So we're continually looking for ways to make Sydney Dogs and Cats Home a place that not only retains great staff, but it attracts great staff as well and volunteers. So that's been a real focus for us, and we'll be continuing to grow that as we move to Kurnell and have a really great place to come to work. So I might stop talking and I might hand over to Laura. So Laura Taylor is our head of animal care. She's our head vet, and she'll touch on some of the things I've already mentioned with a little bit more detail.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to see you all here. For those of you that I haven't met, as Mel said, my name's Laura. I am head of animal care. I have been a vet in the animal welfare sector for 15 years now, and I've been with Sydney Dogs and Cats for going on 3 years. And I can say from the bottom of my heart, it is my favourite workplace to date. The staff that we have, the community that we have, the volunteers, the animals, of course. It's a really beautiful workplace and community to be a part of. So I just wanted to start by acknowledging that. And yeah, it truly is a wonderful place to be a part of. So where to start? When I stepped into this role about 18 months ago, one of the discussions that I had with Mel and the leadership team and the board was, how do we expand the good work that we're doing and get into the community? Because I believe that to improve animal welfare, it's wonderful when we do it in-house, but we need to expand that. We need to get out into the community. And so community impact has been one of our primary focuses for a long time, but particularly over the last 18 months. And so from a veterinary perspective, to have that community impact, we needed to grow a team. So when I started, we had 1.5 vets, 1 nurse. That's a really challenging size team to have any kind of real impact with. So we now have a vet team that consists of 4 vets and 6 nurses and some admin support. And needless to say that as a result of us being able to expand that team, we have absolutely been able to extend the work and the community impact that we have been able to have and will continue to do. So the last 18 months have been doing a lot of that foundational work, building that team, getting us ready to be able to get out there and really have impact, both for our animals, of course, but the wider community. So that's been a primary focus. Now that we have a really solid, equipped, very highly skilled team, we have started to get into desexing programs, which is one of the things that I'm most passionate about. And the reason behind that, and Mel kind of touched on this, is I believe we need to step out of being a reactive animal welfare sector and we need to become proactive. And desexing animals is such a huge component, because unless we break the vicious cycles of animals breeding continuously, particularly cats, we're going to have that influx of animals more and more every single year. And with our limited resources, it means what we can do becomes very limited. So we have grown several strong desexing programs, which I'm very proud of. We obviously desex all of the animals that come into our care, but we've grown strong partnerships. So Cat Protection Society is an organisation that we now have a very strong relationship with, and we have an ongoing desexing program with them. We're also registered under NDN, so the National Desexing Network, and we are consistently offering low scheme desexing options for people who can't afford it. That has been something that has very much added to our workload, but I truly believe is so important for us to be doing to have that community impact. Mel also touched on other partnerships. So we've been a support partner for the RSPCA because we're all in this together. We're all here for animal welfare. We're all here to have that community impact and to reduce animal suffering, essentially. And so we partner with them to support desexing schemes, in addition to multiple other council desexing programs. So that's been a huge thing that we've started to do, particularly over the last 12 months, and we will continue to expand on that. The vet van. When I first stepped into this role, it was something that it was a distant dream. I thought if we can get a van and we can somehow get a team, we can get out into the community. We can physically go and start to support people and their animals because, of course, our doors are always open, but a lot of people can't get to us. And so recently we received the van. We then finalized the fit out, which please go and have a look. It doesn't look very special to some, but it's a fully equipped vet van where people can bring their animals, we can examine them, we can talk to them, we can tell them what we can do to help them, we can provide support. So we have our first two community outreach days scheduled for June, which is really exciting. And what that will look like is vets and nurses going out with the van into the community. We get to meet members of the community. We get to meet their animals. We get to discuss preventative measures, namely desexing, but also microchipping, vaccination, all of these things that many of us know are so imperative to animal welfare, but a lot of people either don't know that they're important, or they don't know how to facilitate that for their pets. So we're starting to do that, which is absolutely going to be the start of many, and a really exciting initiative that we're going to be doing. Another passion that we have at Sydney Dogs and Cats Home is to be fear-free. And so when I first started as a vet, you used to see a lot of scared animals coming into the clinic and the shelter, and that wasn't always recognised, either in the way that animals were being handled or, the way in which they were being housed. And so there's now a fear-free accreditation, which I'm proud to say that we have achieved. And it means that all animals who come into our care have staff who are trained in this fear-free method. And so it's just another way that we are improving the welfare of the animals in our care. And so we're accredited, which is something else that we've been working on behind the scenes. And I'm proud to tell you guys that we are there. It's a milestone that we're hit, and it's a really wonderful achievement. Frameworks, probably not as exciting as the vet van. And something I suppose I thought, oh gosh, I'll get to that. But we needed to get to that because, again, when I came into this position, we were probably lacking a little bit in terms of frameworks that really gave us consistency and were modelled by scientifically based, gold standard, how do we manage animals within our care. So we now have robust frameworks, policies and procedures. I know, again, that's not very exciting, but we have all of those in place that ensure our disease control methods, our biosecurity methods are all really, really, they're robust. That's the best word that comes to mind. And so when there have been disease outbreaks in Sydney in recent times, namely feline parvovirus, which many of you may or may not have heard of, we've been really lucky and we haven't been affected because we have these systems and these frameworks in place that protect our animals and our staff for that matter when they come in. We've also developed an animal assessment and euthanasia framework. Now, nobody comes into the animal welfare sector to want to talk about animal euthanasia. It's a heartbreaking topic. It's something that, it's a very challenging topic to discuss. but it's an important one that needed to be had. And so, to ensure that we are maximising the welfare of the animals within our care, we needed to have a framework in place. And so we have one now. We still strive to absolutely minimise our euthanasia rates. However, we also need to make sure that we're protecting the community for the animals that we're rehoming, and that also we have a framework in place for our staff. Because if there's not consistency with decisions, that can be incredibly difficult for staff. So, amongst all the other exciting frameworks like biosecurity, we also have an animal assessment and euthanasia policy now in place. So it's been a really big few years. We've achieved a lot of really wonderful things. And I think the impact that we are going to continue to have for both the animals within our care, but again, the wider community is, yeah, it's endless. And I think we're at a really exciting time. And again, I'm just grateful to be a part of Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. And I think that's pretty much it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Laura. Probably up there with the vet van. We're now going to talk about Kurnell. So we did it. So that sign says that we did it. And that fills me with pride, emotion. I don't know. It's been a battle. Um, sorry, it's a very emotional topic for me. We've fought for our lives over the last couple of years. The government shut us down and said that they would not be supporting us. However, with incredible community support, incredible dedication from the people at Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, we wouldn't take no, and we fought. And fortunately, very gratefully, the government agreed to support us. Now, without a shelter, we don't have a future. We now have a shelter and we have a future, and that's been secured. So it's a huge moment for us. Now, I get so emotional about this because this there's tissue somewhere. This has been a project of mine well before I was in this role. This has been my absolute passion for nearly 5 years now, trying to get this across the line. And I've given it my all, as have a lot of members of the home, because there was too much at stake not to secure our future. There was too much impact on people and pets to not get this done. So we fought tooth and nail and we got there, and the government is supporting us, and we are very grateful for the government for doing that. So let's have a look at what Kurnell is going to look like, which is very exciting. So what we've done is broken Kurnell into 2 stages. We needed to be on site as quickly and as economically as we could. So we can't do the entire big build straight away, which is okay. So we've broken it into 2 stages. So this is what stage 1 is going to look like. And there's a number of pictures around the room for the people who are here in person, and I'll be showing them as part of the presentation as well. So stage 1 will give us 50 dog kennels. It'll have housing for 50 cats. It'll have staff and reception areas for people who are coming to reclaim and adopt pets. We'll have a maintenance area, which will have laundry and kitchen facilities. We'll be using shipping containers for storage. We'll have parking for 31 cars, and we'll have 3 exercise and training yards with a exercise path the entire perimeter of the home for walking. Now, what we've done with the design is the bare basics. It's not the Taj Mahal. It's not going to look fancy, but it doesn't need to. It needs to be operational. It needs to create a space for our staff and volunteers to work safely. But importantly, we have focused on the animals, and this is best practice for the animals. So yes, humans will be in demountable sheds. That's absolutely fine. The investment is in the animals to make sure that their kennels and housing is the best that it can be. So let's have a little look. And again, these maps are around the room if you'd like to walk around later and have a look. So the cats will be on the right-hand side of the facility, as far away from the dogs as we can. And you can see on the left, we've got a number of banks of kennels there. So we have 5 kennel blocks of 10. Each kennel will comprise of a night and a day kennel. and there will be outdoor areas on each kennel block so that when they're not out in the yards being walked, played with and trained, that they will still have beautiful outdoor areas where they can get fresh air and sunlight to ensure the best practice animal care. That big green area down the bottom, that's reserved for stage 2. So that's where we'll be building our vet clinic and community education spaces, some more office areas, and we'll be able to grow and expand our services with stage 2. So stage 1 gets us on site and operational with a small area to grow, but stage 2 is where more growth will happen. And we can have more on-site community impact work as well as our outreach. So that's what the plan looks like. Let's have a look at a couple of pickies of what the actual site's going to look like. So this is as you enter on the site. You can see it's all very low line. They're not huge buildings. We've gone for the absolute bare minimum, both for cost to make it as cheap as possible to build and to build it as fast as possible. So the buildings will be demountable buildings for staff and cats clad in ColourBond. Inside the first building, you can see there with the windows at the top, that will be our cat housing with some staff offices at the back. The building next to it will be our reception area where people can come and reclaim and adopt animals. And the kennels will be at the other side of the site. We then have our exercise yards, which will be so important for us to be able to get the animals out of the kennels, play, socialise, behaviour training. We'll have 3 exercise yards, and these paved areas will go around the entire site so that we can walk animals. There is also a lot of area around the site, outside of the site, that we can take them off site for walking as well. This is a little snapshot of the kennels. So you can see here, there's day and night for each kennel, and these are the outdoor areas attached to the kennels so that when they're not out in the play yards, they can be out in sunbake and get fresh air. What you'll see here on the roofs has been an important part for us. We did a modification application after we got our DA approval to look at how we can make the site as sustainable as possible. So we did things like putting in rainwater tanks to harvest our rainwater. We've got 4,000 square metres of grass. We need to be able to water that with minimal environmental impact. And we've put solar panels on all the roofs. The kennels will be air conditioned for climate control for the animals. That's extremely expensive to run. So we looked at how can we minimise our ongoing operational expenses. And we've put solar panels across the site. Again, reduce our impact on the environment, but also so that we can keep our heads above water financially. So that's what it's going to look like, which is very exciting. So let's talk about timeline. So we are in the final stage of our document preparation. Next week, we launch our tender process with 4 construction companies that we've identified to support the project. That process should be complete by the end of July, and we will then be commencing construction in August 2024, which is just around the corner. We're estimating completion to be July 2025. Now, of course, with construction, lots of things can go wrong. However, it is an incredibly simple build. Once the site is flat and prepared and our electricity, stormwater and everything's hooked up to the site, the construction period itself will be very quick. So even with potential delays of resources, weather, we're still hoping to be on site and operational from August 2025, which if we think about the last 12 months, how fast that has gone, that will be here before we know it. And there's lots of work for us to do before we are on site. Let's talk money. When we started this project, so 5 years ago when we started pulling all this together, stage 1 was going to look at costing about $9 million. Fast forward to 2024, stage 1 is now $17 million. Yeah, which is why the dog's looking so shocked. Ah, goodness me. So stage 1 was meant to be completely funded by government funding. So the government has committed to providing $12 million towards the project, which when we first went to government would have completely funded stage 1. However, with time delays, that has increased the cost of the project. We've made some additions, things like solar panels, water tanks, covered walkways. That's increased the cost. And now that we're not making assumptions, we've actually got the detailed drawings to understand the engineering of the site. There's a lot more expense attached to it than we first thought. So with all those three, we've gone from $9 million to $17 million. So we have a hole. Now, you'll see at the bottom, it says $12 million government funding and $8 million fundraising. I know that that doesn't add up to make 17 million, thankfully. The reason why that figure is 8 million, we need $5 million to complete stage one. But what is really important is that we get our vet clinic on site as quickly as possible. Because while it's off site, we're continuing to pay an additional commercial lease, which financially is not sustainable. It's also best practice for the animals and our people to have our vet clinic on site. Transporting animals for vet care for our people going back and forth is not ideal. So we want to try and move our vet clinic as quickly as possible into stage one. It was originally designed for stage two. So that's an additional $3 million to be able to do that. So we have a huge target now of raising $8 million in the next 3 years. That will complete stage one and it will bring our vet clinic on site. Every time I mention that figure, Karen starts twitching. Karen's our head of fundraising, and $8 million is a big number. But we will do it. We've come so far and achieved so much. And this is just another little thing that we need to focus on and achieve, which we will do. So I think that might segue nicely to Karen. Karen, if you'd like to come up. Karen is our head of marketing and fundraising, and Karen is working closely with me on a capital campaign to raise $8 million in 3 years.
Oh, thank you so much for coming here today. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. It's just incredible to see everyone at home and everyone here. It's been a long time coming. I mean, how good is it? We are going to build our forever home. And can I just say, when I first started my week one, I have to tell you, my week one, we got told by New South Wales government they weren't going to fund us, and how that has changed. It's incredible. We had to work hard to get here, and it is fantastic to be here. So, as Mel said, I'm head of fundraising and marketing. I've been working in fundraising and marketing for over 20 years, but it's okay. And I just wanted to say I'm absolutely passionate about fundraising. Now, I know that's a little bit difficult for people to understand sometimes. Fundraising can be a really challenging thing, especially going into tough economic times. We are going through a cost of living crisis. We see this firsthand. We might see this with our families, our loved ones, our friends and our supporters. It is tough out there, and we are always cognizant of that. We always know that people are helping us in any way they can, and we really appreciate it. Fundraising is integral, though. It's integral to Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. It's integral to us helping more pets, bringing together more pets and people, building our forever home. We can't do it without fundraising. And the reason why I'm passionate about fundraising is because I see the positive in it. It is one way to bring a community of people from different walks of life together for a cause that they love. And that's pretty special. It's pretty special to witness. Our community is incredible, and they have supported us so much over the last few years. We've been able to achieve so much because of our community. And I've got some notes simply because I didn't want to forget anything, but this is really tip of the iceberg stuff. Our community has donated to our appeals. We've been able to grow the revenue of our appeals over the last few years in tough times. So our Christmas appeal in 2022 was the biggest Christmas appeal we have ever had. Our tax appeal last year blew the targets out of the water. We were surprised as anyone, and it was simple tweaks to make it easier for people to support us and to give. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because it was thanks to our supporters. Not only did they donate, they shared. They shared their story. They shared the goal of Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. And it was incredible to see. That money was integral in keeping our doors open while we were trying to lobby government to provide us with the 12 million essential to build our forever home. It helped us keep the doors open. It helped us pay the rent that was spiraling. It helped us pay the electricity that was spiraling. And that was integral. We've also held crowdfunders that our community has supported us with. One of the ones that stands out to me is the beautiful Gem and Sunburst. We supported them to get heart surgery. So we had a heart specialist that was able to operate on Gem and Sunburst. And the prognosis was not good, but we had to give it a go. We had to try our best. And when we held a crowdfunder, our supporters came and donated and shared the story. And now Gem and Sunburst are living their best lives and with their forever homes. And that was just incredible to see. So thank you. Our supporters have helped us at events. They've volunteered at events. They've fundraised for us. They've taken on challenge. They've done push-ups. They've done sit-ups. They've gone into schools and into businesses to raise funds for us, which is incredible. And they've spoken far and wide about us to extend our reach, to get even more people to support us. Our supporters have supported our new online store, which, we redesigned that store. We have some beautiful merchandise for sale. You've helped us engage partners, corporate partners, council members, even our council partners have helped us get out there and talk about desexing, get out there and talk about preventative strategies so we can help more pets and bring more pets and people together. So thank you so much. And mostly you've also given in a way that suits you. There's no one way to give and to donate. And my goal has been to extend the number of ways that people can support us in a way that works for them at the right time. And so we've been able to diversify the way people can donate to us. And as anyone knows, in really tough times, that's critical in keeping an organization sustainable. So thank you very much for that as well. So all these successes is thanks to you. And it really, the thing I think of is that no one person can just do one thing, can do everything, but we can all do one thing, right? And that's where all of you come in at home or here today. That's where all of you come in, because we have a big, bold goal that is not getting me too nervous, because I know thanks to us, thanks to you and thanks to our successes, we can do it. We can absolutely fundraise and raise 8 million in 3 years. I'm absolutely confident of that because of the successes we've had. We also know that 8 out of 10 Aussie households have dogs or cats. So we're relevant. We're really relevant to the people outside our existing supporters. So how then do we grow our reach? How do we grow the people that support us so that we can raise 8 million in 3 years? And that is where we need your help, because we're going to run a big fundraising appeal August timeframe where we really highlight to Sydney. We get the whole of Sydney behind us. We want to show Sydney what we're made of, what we do, the impact we have, how many dogs and cats and pocket pets do we help, how many pets and people do we bring together. We know that in the room, but we want all of Sydney to know that. So picture, we have billboards, we've got radio, we've got earned media. And by earned media, I mean TV news, radio, print media, where they want to follow us because we've got something to say. We're looking at posters in local businesses. We want the whole of the community to actually be talking about Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. And this is where you come in. The things that you can do, and the things you're already doing, is amplifying our message on social, for example, or amplifying our message by talking to your friends and family about what we're trying to do. By this, you extend our reach, So you extend more people that know about us. On social, when you're engaging, when you're doing simple things like engaging in a post or liking and sharing, for example, Facebook does this weird thing where it says, oh, look, more people are liking and sharing on social media. We're going to send it to more people. And then more people hear about Sydney Dogs and Cats Home and what we're trying to do. I'm looking for people that might know media buyers that want to help us secure free ads, free billboards. You might know someone like that is in the advertising space that can help us secure things as cheaply as possible so we can get out there. We'd love for you to introduce us to your business contacts. We've got a lot to say, we've got a lot to offer, and we can help businesses achieve their goals as well. And they can help us through donations or through sponsoring, for example. So we want for you to introduce us to people that you think can help us. You might know other philanthropists, people that really want to support us in a big way and want to be part of this growth and helping more dogs and cats. You can volunteer like you already do. You can volunteer at our events. You know, you can, of course, if you wish to, support us financially and continue to do that. There are so many ways you can help us, and we will be coming to you with some more specifics. But I'm sure with, you know, the supporters that we've got in this room and online, and our supporters in general and the general public, will be able to make this happen. We'll be able to get 8 million in 3 years. So let's make it happen. We can do it. Now on to the next thing, volunteers. It is it's National Volunteer Week, which is incredible. We really, you know, we can't do it without our volunteers. Both Laura and Mel have touched on this. It's not just the physical work that they do, but it's the psychological support that they give us when we're in the office. When it's been a challenging day, it's sometimes the smile, the hey, well done, the getting excited about what they're doing that really helps us. So I wanted to just give a big shout out to our volunteers and say thank you very much. Now we'll need specific volunteers going into Kurnell. There'll be some specifics that we need, and to help us grow our volunteer base, to help us cater to the specific needs of Kurnell. What we need to do is we need to form a committee to help us with that, so we can start planning now. And what we would love is expressions of interest in joining the Kurnell Volunteer Committee. So I know many of you're here today. You might be interested in helping us with our volunteer committee so we can gear up our volunteers for Kurnell. There are some clipboards. Shireen's holding up a clipboard right now. So please put your name and your details and we'll be in contact. But once again, I just wanted to say thank you so much to not only our supporters, but our volunteers, and give you a big clap and a round of applause. Thank you. So I think that's really all I've got to say. I mean, I've got plenty to say, but I'll shut up now and stop. Mel's just giving me the, okay, go now. but we're open for questions. If anyone has questions online or questions here today, we're more than happy to answer them.
Shireen, are there any comments or questions online? I have a question. Dorothy.
Yeah, great question, Dorothy. And I'll just repeat it quickly for the people online. The question is around our leases at Strathfield and Austral and how they align with Kurnell. It's a very good question. So we need to continue our lease at Strathfield until we have the vet clinic built on site. So that could be another 3 years until we've got the funds raised to build the site. So we need to keep our lease at Strathfield ongoing. So it will go well past when we move into our site for stage 1. Austral is an ongoing lease. So we had the lease until December of this year. We extended it to June of next year, and we'll do a month-by-month extension until we transition to Kurnell. So once we're on site at Kurnell and we've moved the last of the animals across, we will then cease our lease at Austral, which financially for us, again, is not sustainable to continue that. So again, the question for online attendees is there a risk that the kennels won't renew the lease? That is a genuine risk. So we have the site secured till June 2025. I'm trying to get this project done as quickly as possible to minimise that risk, but it is still a risk. They have other plans for that site. Yes, they do. They do have other plans for the site. They have different plans for that site. So it's quite valuable land out at Austral. They're doing a lot of residential developments out there now. So the site that we're currently using is a boarding kennel site. They're commercial kennels. They have a longer term plan for that site, which I understand is not continuing as boarding kennels indefinitely. However, they have not put a time frame on that yet. So I think the risk is low. It is a genuine risk, though, that we need to consider, and we will be coming up with plan B and C in case that does happen, so that we don't all end up with 10 dogs in our backyard each before we get to Kurnell.
It's so close to the Sutherland now. Is there going to be some kind of or are they still going to be very separate?
They're very separate facilities, and we actually have a member here from Sutherland Shire Council, which is lovely to have her in the room. The two sites will run independently. I'm hoping that we work together very closely on a community aspect. We talk pretty regularly around what the future looks like, and I hope that we continue a really strong relationship moving forward where we support each other and share, community resources and things moving forward. So I don't see that being a problem. I think potentially it could work in our favour and with Sutherland in their favour. Not at this stage, no. But we can always continue conversations. It will yep. Mm-hmm.
With the dog with the 9 years.
Yeah.
But they had to go in at certain times during the day.
Mm-hmm.
It broke our heart, really. But will they be out longer?
Do you mean out of their kennels longer? Yeah, there were restrictions there. That's right. We will continue to operate as a 7-day facility as we do now. It won't be a 24/7 facility, so there won't be staff on site 24 hours. There still will be working hours on site. They will potentially be slightly expanded to what they are now, depending on staffing and volunteer support that we can get for the site. But our intention is always to have the animals out as much as we can out of the kennels, and the design of the kennels will be much better in terms of when they are in the kennel, having that outdoor space where they're not confined to an indoor kennel. But, we'll have a number of exercise yards and areas for them to spend more time out of their kennels. But that's always our goal, to have them out as much as possible. And that's where a lot of these volunteers in the room are so critical, where they come and do furcations and actually take the animals out and give them a beautiful experience outside of their kennels. Yeah, thank you. We'll just go to the front first. Yeah. It's a great question. So for online attendees, the question is around the bus bay in the plans. Is that a public bus run, or what the intention is for that? It was a requirement of our DA that we had a bus bay. So there's not a public bus route going past there. Beyond us is pretty much National Park, and there's a map next to Troy. If you could just, you can see there the yellow and green is where the proposed site is. Beyond that is pretty much National Park. So there's no bus route that goes down. Next door to us is the desalination plant. They don't run buses down there. However, in saying that, it is our intention to look at community transport to the site, because getting to the site is challenging without a car. The closest station is at Kurnell. So we are looking at ways. And when Karen mentioned the volunteer program, we are looking at ways to look at transport from the local station to bring volunteers to the site and members of the public to the site. So there's lots of opportunities for us. And we need to be a bit creative with it, but we will come up with solutions once we're on site to help people who don't have a vehicle to drive to the site. Did you have a question? Yep. another great question. So the question was, will Kurnell be open to the public like it was at Carlton? One of the things that we discovered through COVID, we had to lock the site down. So historically, people used to come through the kennels and bring their family. It was a bit of a day out and kids would come and poke dogs through the gate. Through COVID, of course, everything had to be locked down. So we could no longer have members of the public walking through the site. Now, although there's negatives attached to that, there are also a lot of positives on a number of areas. So certainly for the animals, from an animal welfare perspective, not having people walking past the kennels and kids poking fingers through the fences is a really positive thing. And from a staff perspective, it's really challenging having visitors in and out all the time. The site is locked down in different areas. So the kennels, the 4 kennels that you can see at the rear of the site, members of the public cannot have access to that area. That is staff only at the back of the site. There is a block of kennels that runs next to the administration building. That is our adoption kennels. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. That is our adoption kennels, and that will be open to members of the public. However, when I say open to the members of the public, it will be accompanied by a staff member. There is still security access. They can't just come, walk in and see all the dogs. We noticed such a positive change from locking the site down. So yes, there is an impact to adoptions. You're absolutely right, because sometimes people come and walk through, see a dog, fall in love and want to adopt it. And that can't happen when the site's locked down. But there are other ways we can achieve that. Again, using, digital platforms and other ways of showing them who's on site, and then doing a meet and greet. There's little, next to the adoption kennels, there's 3 little green squares there that are grassed meet and greet yards, and they're areas that we can bring dogs out for members of the public to actually meet the animals and interact with them.
I know that there's and it always has been a massive emphasis on not allowing one dog to see another dog at any time.
Visual barriers, yeah.
So are they going to have like they do?
Yeah, so there are visual barriers in the kennels, dividing the kennels so that they can't see the dogs on either side. The meet and greet yards and the exercise and training yards at this stage are open. However, we'll be taking advice from the senior animal personnel on best practice. There are some dogs that require visual barriers and other dogs benefit from an open environment. So that's the sort of thing when we're on site, that's a change we can make then if we find that visual barriers are required in certain areas where they're not currently, we can add them. But again, we're following best practice with everything we do on site, and there's a lot of enrichment opportunities to happen without visual barriers, but ensuring there are safe spaces for the animals that do require them. But Laura will be integral in sort of monitoring that and working with the team to make sure the animals have the best environment possible. Thank you. It's a great question. Yeah, hi. Yeah, it's primarily a recommendation committee. So it's a group of individuals coming up with the design for the program that we need at Kurnell. We need a lot more volunteers on site at Kurnell than we do now. We're very restricted with our current facilities, how many people we can have on site, but we need to get back to something similar to the Carlton days. We used to have 7 volunteers on every shift at Carlton with the dogs. Now we're very limited to 1 or 2, that's right. Well, when Sue's there, it's 1. But we will be using that committee to design what the requirements will be to make sure we have enough people on site at any time to provide the care and enrichment that's needed for the animals. So that committee will look at how the function of the site works, how volunteers will work within that, and what role they can play. Once that program is designed, we then need to look at implementation. How do we recruit the volunteers to be able to fill the roles? We lost a lot of volunteers through COVID and transitioning to our current premises. How do we attract some of those old volunteers back? How do we attract new volunteers to support us? And that committee will be providing recommendations on the design and the implementation of that program. Yes. Yes, potentially. So there is a passenger ferry starting from La Perouse to Kurnell, back and forth. The design of this ferry is less around commuting. It's more around tourism. It's not a car ferry. It is just for passengers. So we're still going to have a transport issue getting from the ferry to the premises. However, again, like we were talking about with the station at Cronulla, we can come up with creative ways to support people getting to and from the site. And the ferry might enable more people from the eastern suburbs to come across to Kurnell. Yes, Dorothy. That is correct. So the wharves are underway. I think they're having trouble with tendering, finding a provider to provide the service. By the time we've got stage 2, hopefully we'll have someone running the ferry service. But I don't have all the information on the ferry. I'm probably not the best person to talk about that. But you know, if people do have questions specifically about the ferry, I would contact Randwick Council. They are working on the tendering for the ferry service. Thank you, Rachel. It's a very good question. So Rachel has asked, besides the funding that we need to bridge the gap from the government funding and what we need for Kurnell, are there other fundraising requirements that are needed? The answer is yes. We still rely heavily on community support just to keep our doors open, both in our current state and when we're at Kurnell. So on top of the $8 million in 3 years that we're raising, we still need to raise about $2 million every year just to keep our doors open and the lights on. So thank you. That's a very good question. Yes, we do. So the question is, are we going to have behaviourists on site? So we do currently have an employee who focuses on animal behaviour. And that person will not only continue with us, but expand the services once we're at Kurnell, and hopefully have that side of what we do available to members of the public as well. Sue?
50 kennels for dogs. So, I mean, that would be much more than we need at the moment. So, are you looking at getting taking Fairfield Council back again? Or is that really
no, it's a very good question. Are we looking at taking Fairfield Council back because we will have more kennels? The best way for me to answer that is a number of councils are wanting to come and use our services, and we will be looking at the best partnership matches based on a number of location being one. It's important that we service councils that are close to us so that when people are reclaiming an animal, they don't have to travel too far. But there are a number of councils asking to work with us. At the second half of this year, we'll be putting out information to all councils, offering an EOI, an expression of interest. They can contact us with their expression of interest to use the services, and we will then work with them to find the best partners for Kurnell. So 50 kennels does give us the ability to grow slightly and take on some animals back. It basically gives us the same capacity that we had at Carlton. And then stage 2 will give us the ability to grow further. Yes. The question is, do those local government partnerships help with operating costs? So the financial model that we have at the moment is that councils pay for service. They don't contribute beyond the cost of the care for an actual animal. That, unfortunately, is down to community support. But we have changed our financial model so that councils now pay for the level of service that we're providing, whereas before that was all funded by community support as well. But that was one of the biggest changes we made with our new financial modelling. Thank you. Thank you.
So Troy is wondering why we need to get the vet clinic essentially on site at Kurnell to be with the animals as quickly as possible, and also what opportunities that potentially opens moving forward. So the first part of that question is that we need the vet clinic to be on site so that the animals are receiving gold standard care. Okay. A lot of the animals that come into the organisation, that come through our doors, need vet treatment for multiple reasons, whether it's physical ailments, behavioural concerns. And at the moment, we've got a massive gap. We are, vets and nurses are going out and seeing them every week, but they're not on site with them. So once we are all on site together, animals benefit. It means they have essentially a vet and nurse there at their beck and call, and they absolutely should have that. So the standard of care is the main thing that it comes down to for the animals that can just continue to skyrocket once we have the vet clinic on site. And also it means that the slight bottleneck that we have at the moment, that animals have to get transported to us for desexing, for all of the surgeries that they receive, it means we widen that out, we remove that. So the time and the length of stay that animals are with us continues to improve.
So the question is, how feasible is it to expand the current plans to commercial boarding for cat and yeah, so there's a couple of ways to answer that. Although there is a lot of land there, what you can see on that plan is 50% of the actual property size. The back half of the land, you can see the yellow area that's highlighted on the map over there. We can't build on because it's environmentally protected land. There's a swamp marsh and a cute little protected bullfrog that lives in there, and we can't use that land. So we are restricted just to the front of the property, which you can see here. The front area is going to be built with stage 2. So that area will be taken up with the completion of stage 2, and it actually doesn't give us much land left. We don't want to compromise our exercise and outdoor areas for the animals by building more kennels and cats. We also don't want to just continue to build more kennels and cats. However, when you're talking about from a commercial aspect, although there's financial income generating opportunities by having commercial boarding on site, there's also a risk when you're running a shelter with disease, infection control. There's a number of reasons why we wouldn't do that go beyond just being able to make money. Yeah, but thank you. It's a good question. So the question from Rachel is, are there any options to finance areas of the build like green loans for solar panels? We're looking for partnerships, grants, any opportunity that we can to help fund stage 1. So if there are grants available for environmental things like solar panels, rainwater tanks, we will be applying for them. If there's organisations who can donate materials and supply, if anyone knows a solar panel manufacturer, we would like to talk to them. If we can get low bono or pro bono support, low cost or free support, we will certainly be grabbing every opportunity that we can, because the $8 million target doesn't necessarily have to be cash. If people can supply materials and resources, that's chipping away at the cost of the build. So yes, things like solar panels. I have already asked the government if we can get some grants towards that. Apparently there's none available at the moment, but I don't like being told no, so I will keep asking the question until someone gets annoyed and says yes. And the second question. Thank you, Melissa. Not me. Obviously, I'm not asking my own questions. The question is around soundproofing for the cats and dogs. The design of the kennels has been done in a way to maximise airflow and ventilation for cooling. It's also been designed in a way to maximise natural soundproofing without additional soundproofing. The cats have been put at the far end of the site to the dogs, again, to minimise noise and disruptions to the cats. There's not soundproofing specifically added to the kennels and catteries, but in the design of the kennels and the structure of the buildings that they're in, it is to reduce sound and noise. And we do have different kennels with different sorts of dogs in them. So we have a dangerous dog kennel. So dangerous dogs who potentially might be making a lot more noise will be separated to other dogs who are not. And we have the ability to move animals around so that they're surrounded by animals that are giving them a high quality while they're in the kennels. Thank you. Any other questions online? No? Okay. Any other questions in the room? Yes. Oh, okay. That makes me a little bit nervous, but yes. Would you like the microphone? No, don't give George the microphone. Don't give George the microphone.
Following with great interest the progress from a near-death experience in Dr. Cat's home to a very vibrant, modern, optimistic future. About 3 weeks ago, I was sent a photo of the paddock concern of which I was a member. It's not all that long ago. There were 25 people at this pyramid top echelon, the management team. 25. And there wasn't one woman. This is not very long ago. And this place has been turned around from near death to a beautiful looking future. Now it's back here. Exactly. Exactly. There's not just the intelligence in the drive, it's something that comes from deeply within. And I've seen that with each of the speakers. And I know it's through personal association. I think it's been a remarkable thing to observe. This photo of stuffed up, pumped up men, all looking very important, 25 of them, top of the pyramid, not one woman. And this team, all women, have turned it around. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind. And Jo sitting at the front is our president, who is also female. So, yes, Mick, that's a good question. So, volunteers, I think it's about 5% men to women. It's similar to staff, actually. The ratio is this sector attracts a lot of women to the sector, typically because we're very caring, compassionate, but it also attracts a lot of wonderful men to support the work that we're doing. Yeah, but it's low. It's about 5% for both staff and volunteers. Yes, there will be. We'll have the ability in stage 1 to incorporate community coming to the site, but that will definitely grow with stage 2. We'll have some community and education space on site. All of that, yeah. So it's actually really exciting for us. We used to do a bit of that at Carlton. So it'll be great to not just restore what we used to do, but to expand on that. And I mentioned education as part of the work that we do. An integral part of education is with school children, teaching them about best practice animal care, responsible pet ownership. That starts at school. They're the ones that go home and tell mum and dad that you're an idiot. That's not how you do it. Yeah, all of those things. So we have historically gone into schools and provided that work, but we will be doing a lot more on site once we have the facility. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, I think we might be at the end of our time. So thank you again for everyone who's here in person and for everyone who's joined us online. And again, there's tea and coffee. Please have a drink of something and walk around and have a look at the posters on the walls. There's not just images of Kurnell. There's also some beautiful impact stories about the animals who come through Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. So please just take a minute to have a look at their amazing stories and journeys. And thank you so much to Dean for your support today. Dean was a volunteer with Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. He's now an employee and he's helped us today with all our AV and tech. And thank you, Laura and Karen, for your contribution and for all our helpers here today. Thank you so much.